freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, building a Liberty machine here, down here broadcasting in Little Rock at the Answer Studios, 101.1 The Answer. Really glad that they're hosting us as always. We really appreciate it. Just a little bit under the weather still, if you can't tell. It kind of started yesterday and it's only continued, and I got a feeling that it has something to do with it being 60 degrees, then 28 degrees, then 60 degrees, then 28 degrees. Man was not made to live in climate change. The telephone number 870-275-9799. Notice that it's a man-made climate change. I just said it's just not meant to climate change. We want the same climate over and over. Consistency. Man, we got a good show for you. So coming up, I'm looking at my schedule here, and it says that coming up here towards the end of this hour, around 6:45, 6:50, we'll be talking with Senator Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton will be on the program, so stay tuned for that. We're very excited to have Senator Cotton on. He has been on the forefront, really standing right by the president when it comes to pointing out the problem at the border and really illegal immigration. He did that with his merit-based immigration idea, the bill that he put out there. It was last year, I think, and this basically was an attempt to reform who gets to come to this country legally by saying, we want you to have a skill set. I don't necessarily think that you should come here. You should prove that you're going to be that you're going to benefit Americans and our economy and be productive and that sort of thing. And other countries do the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that, because of course we, as Americans, our politicians get to set immigration policy. Now, this is something that's wildly offensive to the left in this country because they don't believe in borders. Therefore, they really don't believe in the nation state. They don't believe, because with multiculturalism, there is no idea. There's no one idea that's better than the other. And that's of course preposterous, but that's what they believe. The telephone number 870-275-9799. So we'll be talking with Senator Tom Cotton. Then at the top of the next hour, around 7:05, Chris Ann Hall. We'll be talking with Chris Ann Hall. So excited to have her back on the program. Now, she's a constitutional attorney. She's a talk radio host, and she's touring Arkansas this week. Okay, so that's the 20th. So she's already been to AQ Chicken House in Springdale. She's already been to the Warren Rec Room. That was last night in Alma. And tonight, Chris Ann Hall will be presenting in Sallisaw, Oklahoma at the Sequoia County Fairgrounds. So she's making a trip across the border into Oklahoma tonight. But then tomorrow, on the 21st, Chris Ann Hall will be at the Hilton Garden Inn in Jonesboro. She's going to be teaching on state sovereignty, the Constitution, what it says about state sovereignty. Then she'll be in Jonesboro a second night on the 22nd at the Hilton Garden Inn to teach about it says America Disarmed. I'm assuming the Second Amendment is something about the Second Amendment. Anytime you disarm a population, history is very clear that enslavement, taking other rights away, massive death is right behind it. Government sanctioned, by the way, government sanctioned loss of life. Then on the 23rd, So that'll be on a Saturday. She will be at the Courtyard Marriott in Hot Springs, presenting on Liberty First University. Then the next day, Sunday, she will be in Hot Springs at the Gun Cave, which is Jan Morgan's business, the Gun Cave. And, all of this is being done by the Arkansas Liberty Coalition. They're the ones that brought her in and are, taking her around the state to see everybody. So really excited. We're going to talk to her again at 7 coming up. So you definitely want to stay tuned for all of that. Now, I want to talk just a little bit. Yesterday, I started the program yesterday by telling you about the World War II patriot, the soldier who is in that iconic photo. It's the end of World War II, and you've got this sailor that grabs a girl, dips her, and gives her a kiss. And that gentleman died the other day. He was 95 years old. And, the reason I covered it yesterday, although I don't know if I said this, but, well, I guess we did, Joe. I mean, Joe's listening on the other side there. I think we did do this, right? Because Joe said something about how the toxic masculinity in that photo, that iconic photo of him, and that's just not acceptable anymore. Would you believe it that there's a huge statue of this, the kissing sailor, right? It's in Sarasota, Florida. And it's a replica of the Times Square photograph taken after the end of the war. Somebody, some genius who was triggered by this, spray painted the hashtag #MeToo on the statue. Of course, the man died not, at the time this was probably happened, probably didn't die not 48 hours before. And somebody decides, and by the way, this statue is humongous. It's a big statue. And they spray paint #MeToo on it. And as a joke, Joe and I were just simply joking around about this yesterday. Oh, the toxic masculinity of the kissing sailor. No, people are offended. They're legitimately offended. Just like they're offended. Have you heard about there's this hockey team? The mascot is the Predators. And the logo is it's some sort of cat, saber-toothed tiger, something like that. But the name of the team is the Predators, and there's all this pressure. According to one story I read, they wanted to change the name because the word predator is just triggering people. Because of course they think predator has to do with a human being. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, I would get rid of that saber-toothed tiger mascot, and I would actually put the alien predator on my jersey, and then I'd make the hockey gear kind of mimic that science fiction thriller with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Action Jackson, Carl Weathers. Yes, Action Jackson. A lot of people don't know that. Remember Carl Weathers? The first movie I ever saw with Carl Weathers was Happy Gilmore, and then all right. The phone number 870-275-9799. It's 870-275-9799. President Trump declaring this national emergency, and everyone on the left says that there's not a national emergency. He's lying. They're also saying things like the president's going around Congress to do this. Folks, I have cited many times, this is a 1970s era law that gives the president a national emergency. And in the law, it doesn't even really define what a national emergency is. It's extremely subjective. It's extremely subjective because I think most people back in the 70s figured out, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure if it's an emergency, we'll all agree. Apparently not, because the media brainwashes people. I mean, we've had this problem on the southern border for decades. Folks, they one time they found a van full of torsos on the border. Do you understand how ridiculous that is? They found a van just full of human torsos, not mannequins, just people who, I mean, the amount of bloodshed down there is it's barbaric. I don't even know if barbarism even describes it. So it certainly is an emergency. And it's, they've already sued. They sued in the Ninth Circuit. Okay. What are they suing for? This is my question. I was having a conversation with a friend about this the other day. What exactly has he started? I mean, he declared the emergency, but has he? Can you show harm? And by the way, this is in the Ninth Circuit. This isn't even next to the border either. I don't even know how can you show cause. Honestly, I know the Fifth Circuit in Texas is a conservative circuit. I get that. But isn't that where it should be filed? I mean, I'm no lawyer, but isn't that where the lawsuit should be filed? Because that's where the border is actually going to be built. That's where the wall or the fence is going to be built on the southern border of Texas. And so it's actually that area that can show. Okay, so that's the first point. And but the second point is, has he actually done anything to start building the wall yet with the money? You know what I'm saying? Now what did he actually get from what did he get? 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion, something like that. So he actually got that from Congress. So he can take that 1.4 billion and do what he wants to with it right now. Okay. But then you've got 3.6 billion of roughly 8 billion Trump wants to use, like reallocate to spend on the wall. Only 3.6 billion of 8 billion requires an emergency to be declared in order for it to be allocated. This according to Joel Pollack over at Breitbart. So that's interesting. So he's still getting, I guess what I'm saying is, number one is I think the wall is going to continue to be built in the midst of a lawsuit. But how do you distinguish? And this is an honest question. How do you distinguish with the money that he's going to be using that they disagree with? Okay, the 3.6 billion that he's getting, under the national emergency. When do you know that specific dollar amount is, and how do you know which part of the fence or which part of the wall it's being used to build? And maybe I'm overthinking this, but it just doesn't. I don't see how if he hasn't officially started building it based on the money that he's allocating right now. I mean, it's only been a week. So that's very interesting to me. But, it's the Ninth Circuit. They don't care, right? There's not one single Republican judge in the court that they've sued in. So they'll probably get some sort of injunction. I was watching on Fox last night that the Supreme Court is getting tired of these lower courts issuing these national injunctions, these national freezes. And I first of all, the idea that the President of the United States can't send the military to build the border when we're clearly being invaded, the idea that a judge somewhere could stop that is really bothersome to me. Does anyone else find that to be just a little bit bothersome? I mean, what if it was a different scenario? What if it wasn't so politically charged? Where you have such a divided nation? What if this was something that 90% of the country agreed on, and there could still be some lawsuit filed somewhere and some judge saying, no, you gotta stop this. Well, and in this context, if there is a national injunction, what's going to be stopped? According to this report, 3.6 billion of the 8 billion Trump wants to build. And he's already got 1.4 billion that Congress gave him the authority to use. So I guess what I'm saying is, you can't spend all that money at once, right? Because it takes time. You spend the money, you get the materials, you build. You spend the money, you get the materials, you build. You move on to another section of fence. So while this is tied up in court, the wall looks like, for at least a time, there's going to be enough funding available that Trump can use to build the wall. Unless this injunction that is coming, that everyone is expecting, goes even further than that. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. Excuse my voice, sinuses this morning. I certainly am under the weather. We had an exciting day yesterday. I would say Scope Week kicked off with kind of a bang. For those of you that don't know, we're down here covering the 92nd General Assembly of the Arkansas Legislature. Today's Scope Week, or Scope of Practice Week, where, people who just want to work are down here asking for the right to work. That's what it really comes down to. Specifically yesterday, State Representative John Eubanks was running his bill to expand the scope of practice for optometrists, to do things that they're trained to do things that other states already allow optometrists to do. The word scary. By the way, I never knew surgery could be such a scary word. Surgery. Oh, surgery. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. Surgery. I also not noticed that, man, it's special interest. Well, I would just say the bias. Everybody's going to have their opinion. Obviously, State Representative McGee, okay? State Representative McGee, he's on the Public Health Committee. He's an ophthalmologist. Shocking. And he took a lot of time trying to explain to people he's against the bill. He's like, I want to be like Representative McGee. We got it. I'm sure you're a great guy on other issues. We got it. You're an ophthalmologist. You don't think optometrists should be able to do what you paid more money to do. That's really what this comes down to, by the way. So I will talk more about this later in the program. I got some audio I want to share with you. But the bill failed. I think it's going to pass, though. The bill failed. And I'll tell you this. I think they're going to rerun it. It's going to pass, and I'll tell you why. I've had some conversations with some people. But it really comes down to, from what I can tell, the ophthalmologists are mad. They went to more school, and paid more money. And optometrists go to school, and they're going to be able to do they're going to be able to do 3 procedures. Isn't it right? 3 procedures or something like that. That they can't do now in Oklahoma. They've been doing for 20 years. That's really what this comes down to. It's like, well, you didn't go to the school that I went to. Yeah, but we did get training. I mean, we didn't go. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? More than one way to skin a cat. That's what I say. Give people more choice, right? No one's going to, if you got a doctor that harms somebody, no one's going to keep going to that doctor. Word's going to get out, right? That's just my opinion. I don't understand why everybody is just so sensitive. But that, to me, they made surgery a 4-letter word yesterday in that committee, because the word surgery is in the bill. But surgery is defined. It's these boards and stuff. Surgery is they said it in a committee. You could, if you take an eyelash and you pluck it out of an eye, right? Somebody might come along and call that surgery. Anyway, I'll give you the analysis here coming up later in the program on this, so you certainly must stay tuned. Hey, this is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to everybody out there listening, and we're going to take a break. Be back in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, Arkansas. Welcome to the program. Good morning, everybody out there. It is time. It's Tuesday. It's week number 5 of the Arkansas Legislative session, the 92nd General Assembly. And so, as always, we got Mr. Josh Waters on the line. We're going to go over the Week 5 Conduit scorecard. Josh, welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
Oh, hey, Paul. Good morning. I'm doing good.
Yeah, well, awesome. So let's just kind of get right to it. We've got the graphic. We're ready. Let's go and throw this up there. Normally, we start with support bills, and I know there's only 2 bills that are on the scorecard this week. We're going to start with a bill that is opposed. What can you tell us about SB 336, HJR 1018, and SJR 14? So I guess it's 3 bills, but
the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome back to the program. Hey, did you hear about this? 1 second here. Did you hear about the Covington High School kid suing for the entire value of the Washington Post? $250 million. This is incredible to me. Covington student sues the Washington Post for $250 million, citing that they ignored basic journalistic standards. And, of course, the Washington Post is saying we are going to mount a vigorous defense. A vigorous defense. I don't know if the media has ever had as bad of a year as it's had so far. I mean, we're 2 months in, and they are just exposing themselves. I wonder how many people have been, I guess, how many people this year are waking up to the fact for the first time ever that the mainstream media, do you remember where you were when you realized the mainstream media was lying to you? Do you remember where you were when you realized the mainstream media was leftist? Lara Logan, we talked about this yesterday, played for you this CBS journalist, Lara Logan, saying that, saying she's committing professional suicide, but Lara Logan saying, look, journalism is a leftist game, and that we've now become political activists. How many people out there see? I remember when I first realized it, but see, I grew up watching ABC News. I grew up watching Peter Jennings. I believed them. I believed the news. People want to believe. They don't want to believe that the person on the other side of that screen is actively trying to deceive you to accomplish some sort of, political activism but that's the truth of the matter. I was listening to the news on the way in, and it's just lie after lie after lie, on the president, on all of this stuff. Now they're saying, that he tried to manipulate the Southern District of New York. It's one thing after another. Every time Russia collusion is exposed for being a hoax and a cover-up of the really Russia collusion is just an attempt to cover up what the Obama administration did when spying on the Trump campaign. A phony dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton is an excuse to get a FISA application through. All of this stuff. And yet they continue. And by the way, I don't know if you saw the president's tweets about what he thinks about Andrew McCabe and this little book that he's written. Them lobbying members of his cabinet to go against him. How is that not a coup? How is that not an act that's against our democracy? If this were reversed, we'd be hearing about an attack on our democracy. An attack on our democracy. It's all part of one highway tax package.
That's right, Paul. You've been covering it. It was announced last week. This is the highway tax hike plan, and these are the three bills or one bill and a constitutional amendment that would raise people's taxes here in Arkansas. They'd be paying more through all items through extension of a half-cent sales tax. Be paying more for items that are transport because there's also a diesel tax increase, and overall over $4 billion in tax revenue spent on highway maintenance over the next 10 years under this plan.
Wow. So it's actually, it's a no-brainer. If we're looking at these pieces of legislation, does it does it spend money we don't have? Does it increase dependency on government? Does it grow the size of government? Well, taking more money from the people is a growth in government, and so it's very, very easy to oppose on that ground, right?
Yeah, this is the classic spending money we don't have. The money's not there, and so they're, instead of cutting spending somewhere else and prioritizing roads with current funds, they're going out and they're going to be raising taxes. So it is two different measures, and so Senate Bill 336, that's the bill that will go through. It's going to be coming through the Senate side, and it's supposed to be heard actually tomorrow in the Revenue and Tax Committee. But what that bill would do is that's the tax increase. It's a new sales tax at the wholesale level on gas and diesel. And so it's a formula. It's kind of confusing, but at the end of the day, what it does, the way the math works out, people would be paying 3 cents more per gallon for gas, and then 6 cents more per gallon for diesel. The bill also, Paul, for anyone listening that's driving this morning, if they have a hybrid car or electric vehicle, not too many electric vehicles, but a lot of people have a hybrid car, they're going to have to be paying $100 more per year as a new registration fee under this proposed bill.
Okay, let's take this kind of one at a time. Let's back up here, because there's a lot of hidden costs here that maybe we don't even realize. Now, one of those you mentioned, if you're talking about it's more expensive for trucks that use diesel, they're going to be paying more. So you say that, does that mean some of the goods and stuff that we buy at stores could go up because now the cost to transport those goods has gone up?
Yep, that's exactly right. Anytime a tax is placed on a corporation such as a trucking line, a trucking company, those costs are passed on to consumers. So whatever the additional cost is going to cost to transport.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so we've been in the middle of this 92nd General Assembly now for 5 weeks, essentially, 5 substantive weeks. And yesterday, the Arkansas governor, Asa Hutchinson, signed a bill to reduce high earners' income taxes over 2 years, bringing the top rate from 6.9% down to 5.9%. It was a clean bill. This bill was supported overwhelmingly by the Arkansas legislature, dominated by Republicans. And this is a $97 million, eventually $97 million that's going to be left in the private sector, going to be left in the individual's pockets. Now, you've got to couch that now, though, with this highway plan that has tax increases in it, $415 million. So that's not good. Now, I will also say this, and that's why, we scored it yesterday, and we had Josh Waters on, and we oppose it. It's an easy bill to oppose because it's raising more money. We're already spending so much money on roads. So, we need to if we need more money, we need to reprioritize what we already have. Now, I will tell you this. I have some sources that say that there's legislation coming that is going to decrease, at least, decrease the amount of money going to government, if in fact the legislation passes. I'm just telling you. All I'm saying is it doesn't appear that the equation is complete. We've got some unknown variables out there. At least that's what I'm hearing. I could be wrong, but I am hearing that there are some other measures or reforms that are coming down the pike that are going to attempt, at least, the ideas are ideas that would result in less money going to the government here in the state of Arkansas. And these are not just ideas. From what I'm told, this is not, from what I'm told, this would be from leadership. These would be ideas from leadership. Okay? So that's just something to think about as we do. That's why the whiteboard yesterday, or I'm sorry, the whiteboard all week said tax math last week, because I just had this feeling that there was more information out there we didn't know. Now, I will tell you this: I really appreciate that we have bills that are, for the most part, somewhat easy to oppose or easy to support. We're not getting what we've gotten in the past, which was, well, here's a tax cut for veterans, but a tax increase on everybody else that buys candy and soda or whatever, or downloads something on the internet. That's actually, it's really, you put people between a rock and a hard place, and that's just not good. So we haven't seen that yet, and that's not to say that we might not see that in the future, but we haven't seen that yet. So anyway, I'm just telling you, I've got sources saying that there are still more variables to populate in this equation. That's all I'm telling you. That's what I can report to you today, is that even though the highway plan is trying to take more money from us to build more roads, there seems to be other ideas out there that might come after the highway plan. Now, and when I get specifics, I will bring them to you. How about that? When I get specifics, I will bring them to you as soon as I can. Now, something else that passed the other day, I'm sorry, it didn't pass, but that's being floated. ConduitNews.com headline: Arkansas lawmakers could be banned from lobbying activity while in office. The Arkansas Senate passed a bill that would ban state legislators from serving as lobbyists while in public office. While it is already illegal in Arkansas for legislators to serve as registered lobbyists while in office, the measure would take this ban further by banning lobbying outside of Arkansas as well. Ethics have been a focus of the 2019 legislative session following a string of corruption scandals surrounding Arkansas lawmakers. This bill is one of the 6 measures that are aimed at tackling ethics reform. And then if you go over to UALR Public Radio, this is what they write that you can expect to see. A bill that would ban officials from working as registered lobbyists, a bill that increases the penalty for candidates using campaign funds as personal income, a bill that prohibits elected officials from having multiple PACs, a bill that will prohibit contributions from PAC to PAC. Well, and that one, by the way, is something that doesn't make any sense. The PAC to PAC thing, that doesn't make any sense. A bill that strips the retirement benefits from any elected official convicted of a felony, as long as that felony's in conjunction with their duties as an elected official. And then a bill that increases the maximum fine capability for the Arkansas Ethics Commission. Okay. Listen. Where is Medicaid disclosure? Where is Medicaid disclosure? It is extremely hard on the subject of ethics, on the subject of public corruption. It is extremely difficult for me to take seriously ethics. I love the Mark Johnson idea. I love, stripping people of their pensions. I mean, that certainly is a disincentive to steal from the people. But the bottom line is, a lot of the corruption that we're seeing and a lot of the alleged corruption that's in plea deals, we need Medicaid disclosure. We need Medicaid disclosure. I mean, I'm sorry, but folks, it's the fact that you have people who have gone to jail, okay, and or you have people who have been indicted, and okay, everything's fine, nothing to see here, everything's fine. Well, unfortunately, it's still there. I mean, and we proved it a couple of weeks ago. State Representative Jeff Wardlaw, he railed against the Medicaid disclosure bill that failed. That's failed multiple times, just trying to get people to disclose that they're doing business on the side with Medicaid entities. And it failed. And then we find out that Jeff Wardlaw has a secret business partner that's connected to the nursing home industry. And so what does that mean? Yes, we have seen this. We have seen the corruption, demonstrated out there time and time again. And so, to me, if you're going to talk about ethics, do all this other stuff. That's fine, except for the PAC-to-PAC stuff. That doesn't make any sense. It's the only way to compete in politics. I mean, that's just my opinion. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that PAC-to-PAC bill, I think that made the Conduit scorecard as a negative. But do all this other stuff. That's fine. But if you're not going to pass Medicaid disclosure after it's the one bill that would have exposed a lot of this corruption that we're seeing that people are already getting, if you're not going to pass Medicaid disclosure, I just don't see how we can say that we've fixed the problem. Because Medicaid disclosure, which just brings Medicaid into line with all other Arkansas law. If you have a lawn care company and you're a state representative and you get a contract with a state-funded university, you have to tell people about it. You say, hey, I'm a lawmaker, and this university over here is using my lawn care business. I'm getting all this business. You have to tell people about that. Okay? Same thing should happen with a $2 billion a year Medicaid program. If you're getting money on the side as a consultant, or you're selling medical equipment or whatever, just tell people about it so we know for something that may be influencing your vote. It's pretty much common sense. All right, folks, we're going to reset here. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. But I will say this on the tax front, it's the governor signed that tax cut legislation yesterday, and he signed the tax cut legislation yesterday. Now we're debating highways. What is that? Is that going to happen today? And it's also in the middle of scope week. So it's a very busy day, very busy time right now in the 92nd General Assembly. Don't go anywhere.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, Contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
For these items, at the end of the day, when they're sitting on the shelf, the price of those is going to go up. And that's just from the diesel tax increase. Those items will also be more expensive because they're going to be high. Currently, right now, there's a sales tax increase that was passed, set to expire. This would put an indefinite, permanent sales tax increase on the board. So it's kind of a double, triple, quadruple whammy when you're seeing this. As you're driving to go get your new items, you're going to be paying more. Once you get there, you're going to be paying more. And when you're driving home, you're going to be paying more. So that's the gist, of the plan. It's a tax hike. There's some funds that are diverted from casino revenue that's going to be coming in. That's part of the bill. But the big pieces there are the gas tax increase.
Wow. So this would raise...
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really do appreciate it. Also, we've got on the line, welcome back to the show, Senator Tom Cotton is with us. Senator Cotton, thanks so much for spending time with us this morning.
Good morning, Paul. It's good to be on with you.
Yes, sir. I just want to say, thanks for being on the forefront. I know you're definitely supporting. You've had some great ideas about reforming our immigration system, and I understand that there is now talk about needing to get something done when it comes to E-Verify. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Paul. I am going to be introducing legislation that would expand to all employers and make permanent our electronic employment verification system. So this was a system that was created as a pilot program in 1996. But it's been successful. It's gotten better over the last 23 years. Rather than going into work and submitting the paper documents that so many people are familiar with on the first day of the job, say a driver's license or a concealed carry permit or a passport, there'd be a very quick online system. That system works. Its error rate is infinitesimally small, and it's been proven time and again to be the single best deterrent from employing illegal immigrants. So it helps turn off the jobs magnet in our country. There's a lot of debate in the news, obviously, about border barriers and more Border Patrol agents and more border detention facilities, all of which are very important. But one of the main reasons that people immigrate illegally to this country is to take jobs from Americans. If they know that they're going to have to clear an effective electronic verification system, they're much less likely to make that journey in the first place. Moreover, it helps hold employers accountable. When employers are saying, we don't want to use E-Verify because it doesn't work, what they really mean is it does work. They want to get cheap, unskilled, and low-skilled labor into the country so they're not having to pay higher wages to American citizens. That's not what I want to see. I want to see all Americans taking part in the prosperity that America is creating.
Absolutely. And I think, certainly that reflects, I think, the sentiment of a vast majority of Arkansans. It's the common sense thing to do. It is about economic security as well as national security. Again, folks, we're talking with Senator Tom Cotton. We're talking about E-Verify. You mentioned the low wages that employers tend to want. So they tend to want illegal immigration. And then you have maybe the other side that sees illegal immigrants as maybe a future dependent class, also future votes for liberal progressive policies. And I kind of feel like that's why this crisis at the border, it's not something, it's gotten worse, but it's not something that just happened overnight. This has been going on for years, if not, a decade or more. And now we finally have, President Trump bringing this to the forefront of the nation's attention. And I think that's a positive thing to try to fix this problem.
Paul, it really goes back in some ways to the 1986 immigration law, which Ronald Reagan said was one of his worst mistakes in office. That bill gave an amnesty up front in return for enforcement later. Unfortunately, we didn't get the enforcement. We didn't get border barriers. We didn't get more interior enforcement at the workplace. We didn't get reform laws to allow the deportation of violent and felonious illegal aliens that we were all promised, because so many people in Washington joined forces to stop all that. They all wanted the amnesty, big business, pardon me, and a lot of politicians and their backers across the country, they wanted more cheap, unskilled, and low-skilled labor. It's understandable. I get the economic point of it, but we owe it to our own citizens to protect American jobs for American citizens. Moreover, we want to welcome the kind of immigrants who can succeed in our country, who are going to contribute to the economy, who are going to help grow the economy, and ultimately become citizens, not just temporary guest workers that come in and take work and then go back home. I'd much rather see immigrants who want to become American citizens rather than folks who are coming in here to work for a few months to take jobs that Americans could be doing.
Why do you think the left is so offended when, your ideas on more of a merit-based immigration system where, we want people who come into this country that already have skills, that they can participate in the economy, they can pay taxes, do things like that. Why do you think today that is so offensive to those? They even say maybe it's even racist sometimes.
Well, that's a very good question, Paul. I mean, sometimes I think it reflects the left's reflective desire for ever more immigration. And it's not just here in America. You see it in Europe as well. Look what Angela Merkel did in Germany a few years back, just throwing open the doors to anyone who could come. I think it's also a bit of a left-wing challenge to the very idea of the nation state, that, a nation state with borders and a people is something that is a good thing. I think it's one of the great developments in modern human history. I mean, one reason why we have freedom, why we have security, why we have prosperity is that we have a nation with borders, with a government that can provide police services and the rule of law and protection for our property and protection from threats from abroad. 500, 1,000 years ago, you didn't have those things. Look at what happens in movies and TV shows like Game of Thrones. The nation state is the way that we protect ourselves, that we grow our own wealth, that we have a community. A lot of folks on the left are very cosmopolitan in their view of the world. They think the nation state is somehow inherently suspect, and that anybody who wants to be an American should be considered American. That's not the way I view things. I was elected by 3 million Arkansans to represent the interest of Arkansans, not the interest of foreigners. I may wish them well, but it is not my duty to make sure that they are prospering and they are safe. It's my duty to do that for Arkansans and for all Americans.
We're talking with Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, the president declares this national emergency. A lot of people saw this coming. Do you think it's an emergency down there? Do you think it is a crisis on our southern border?
We do have a genuine crisis on our southern border, Paul. And I'll tell you one reason why is that our immigration system, both our physical infrastructure and our legal system, is not equipped for the kind of migration patterns we're seeing now. In part because of well-intentioned law passed by both parties, we are essentially having to let anyone who shows up in our border with a child that they claim is their child in, who rarely then ever shows up again. Immigration has changed in recent years, so we still have a lot of young men coming in to work in jobs, but increasingly we have family units, people with children who are coming in saying they want to claim asylum, they want to be a refugee. Now, I would say that a lot of those claims are not well-grounded because they're not claiming that they're facing persecution because of their religion or political views or sex. They're just claiming that conditions in Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador are dangerous and poor. That's true, but that's what most of the world calls life. That doesn't make us responsible for them. But our immigration system is not well equipped to either detain families together or to track families once we release them into the United States. That's one reason why it's so urgent. Not just that we build the border barriers that get so much attention, but that we change those asylum laws, that we provide more family detention centers and give more flexibility to our border professionals, so we make sure that we don't have a functional open border. So if anybody shows up with a child that they claim asylum, they just get released in the country and never come back.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. During the State of the Union address, the president talked about putting the cartels, the drug dealers, and the human traffickers out of business. That scenario that you just raised, somebody comes to, with a child they claim is their own, and then you never see him again. Sex trafficking is a real problem down there, and that gets so little media attention.
Yeah, so these networks of traffickers will move anything that they can make a dime off. They'll move illicit drugs like marijuana and heroin and fentanyl. They will move stolen goods, and they'll move, art and other artifacts. But in this case, they will also move people, to include little children and little girls. They're not just viewed as a get into the country free ticket, but are viewed as sexual objects that they can make money off of repeatedly. It's grotesque. It's sickening, but it unfortunately happens a lot. And anything we do to encourage the view in Central America that you can pay a few $1,000s to one of these traffickers, have your child come to the United States and get released here, is only going to create more incentives for these human traffickers.
Yeah. And, that brings us back to the E-Verify, the legislation that, like you said, you're working on right now. It really is about, we have to disincentivize. We do need the border security. We do need the wall. But if they come here and they can't find employment, then there's no reason to come here.
That is one reason why an E-Verify system at the workplace is a supplement to a border barrier. It's a supplement to Border Patrol agents. There's no single solution to our illegal immigration problem. It's kind of like, if you look at a band, a band can't just have one instrument in it. It's got to have multiple instruments if it wants to make great music. Same thing goes with illegal immigration. You need border barriers. You need Border Patrol agents. You need more detention centers and judges. But you have to cut off the jobs magnet. And the simplest way to do that and to protect American jobs is E-Verify at the workplace.
Wow. Senator Tom Cotton, really appreciate you coming on the program, spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Paul. Good
All right. Yeah, have a great day. Senator Tom Cotton, everybody. It's always great to have him on. And I'm telling you, the stuff with this stuff that he's promoting with this E-Verify is obviously, like he said, supplemental to border security. And, of course, I love the idea of some of these bigger reforms that maybe can't get traction yet. But the idea, other countries do this where if you want to come to, this country, I think Australia does it, and others, you're going to have to provide that you prove that you have, some sort of skill set. It's about the type of immigrants we want. Because the bottom line is, if we had unlimited resources, then it would be one thing, but we don't have unlimited resources. And, so this immigration thing is about national security. Okay, so we need a secure border, right? Yeah, you do have terrorists that try to come in and do American harm. You do have the MS-13. You do have the angel moms who have lost their children because of illegal immigration. You have all that. But then there's also something, and nobody wants to talk about this, but there's also something called economic security. You heard Senator Cotton talk about it there. This is the idea that we need to, for the benefit of the Americans living here, we don't need to promote policies that are going to make them poorer. And even if you're a progressive and you agree with a social safety net, right? These progressives drive me nuts. Like, so they want these welfare programs. Okay, and I can get behind social safety net for those who truly need it. You have these welfare programs that are made less solvent. Okay, they're made insolvent by unchecked illegal immigration. But in order to get them to agree, that they have to agree that countries with borders, we want a safety net, but we want the safety net for Americans. Oh, that is somehow so radically offensive these days. But isn't that what we should be doing? Shouldn't our policies help a majority of people that live here? But the left doesn't want these borders anymore. They just don't think, they think it's an antiquated notion. They don't understand that borders represent ideas. Go look at a picture of the Korean Peninsula at night. I've said this a million times. The Korean Peninsula at night. Maybe not for long. Have you heard what the president's saying about this? The president's saying, look, North Korea has great economic potential if they'll just continue to work towards peace and denuclearize. Anyway, a special thanks to Senator Tom Cotton for coming on. We're going to wrap up this hour. We're going to be right back here in just a minute with Chris Ann Hall.
of Northeast
I'm
Arkansas.
looking here at the Tax
This
Foundation.
is News Talk 101.3
They've
FM
got a
and
map
12:30
here.
AM KBTM.
And I know maps were
Jonesboro
important when
and
it comes to the
EAB
income
radio
tax,
station.
but we've got the highest gas tax in the region, or of the states that surround us right now at 21. Let's see here. Well, it's number 40. I'm having trouble reading this number here. 21.80. Okay. So 21.80 cents. And this would bring it up to 24.4 cents per gallon for regular gas and 28.5 cents for diesel. Is that correct, Josh?
Yes.
Okay. And then you talk about the registration fees, $100 for hybrid vehicles. If you have an electric vehicle, $200 a year. Yeah, so again, just kind of come back to the principles here. It's an easy bill to oppose if it's going to raise more money from the people. And I want to point out here, that, over at conduitnews.com, you reference the, let's see here, Arkansas Democrat Gazette is saying right now the average person in Arkansas is paying $318 a year for highway maintenance. And we're giving almost $1 billion right now. We're already giving the government almost $1 billion to build our highways. And that's not enough, apparently. So, I mean, when you look at those optics, it's like, it kind of feel like we're at a tipping point here where the citizens, I mean, how much can you actually tax the citizens of Arkansas? At what point is it just too much?
Yeah, this bill, unfortunately, it increases that overall tax burden. It's what people feel, right? And we already know the tax burden in Arkansas. When you look at it as a business tax climate, we're 46 out of 50. The worst state in the region, the worst state in the South, and the worst red state. And so, it just doesn't really line up. But this would increase the overall tax burden. What you're saying, we already pay $318 per person on roads, $1 billion annually. This would increase $414 million a year in addition to that billion that's already spent.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a massive, massive highway plan.
Yeah, it really is. And the correct number is actually $414 million. I know $300 million is thrown out there, but that's only because if you only look at what the state's going to get. We have cities and counties that are going to get a lot of this money too. And here's the crux of it for me. I drive around on roads that I'm not happy with, and so there's going to be a lot of people, I think, who are tempted to say, okay, let's go ahead and do this because we want better roads. But I think I don't think you should trust the government to do that, because we're already giving them a lot of our money. And they are failing to build the roads with what we're already giving them, which is a lot. It is a lot of money. And so what makes any of us think that they're going to change their behavior? I mean, if they're not, and I wish, and I say this with all due respect, but if they're going to do this, and they're Republicans, and they're going to do this, I do feel like they owe the public an explanation, at least something to show us that says, hey, we've already cut this, still not enough. We've cut this, still not enough. We've looked at cutting this, but we can't. Where's that conversation, Josh?
Yeah, Paul, and that's kind of where we're at. There's been some tax cuts this session. There was an income tax cut, and that's good. But at the end of the day, if they cut taxes in one spot but raise them the same or more somewhere else, how is that overall burden, the amount of money that's going to government, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's what, affects the economy. Will there be more people in people's pockets to start the economy, or will it be in government? And of course, I think there's a strong argument saying highways help the economy, but the numbers we're looking at here are just so massive. So these are two different measures. So procedurally, the bill, Senate Bill 336, that'll go through like a typical piece of legislation. It'll go through committee, through both chambers, and be voted up or down and then become law. Mm-hmm. Now, the other proposal, that would be extension of the half-cent sales tax increase. That would be a proposed constitutional amendment that is referred out to the people So the people will have an opportunity, if this goes forward, to vote up or down on increasing, taxes on themselves to the tune of almost.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Thank you so much for being with us today. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality, building a liberty machine here. And we are here broadcasting remotely from the affiliate, The Answer, 101.1 The Answer, out of Little Rock, that is gracious enough to carry this program. And we are going to be heading to the Marble Palace to monitor everything that happens there today as soon as this broadcast is over here in about an hour. Hey, welcome back to the program. We got constitutional attorney, talk radio host Chris Ann Hall is on the line. Chris Ann, thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Oh, no, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks for coming to Arkansas. How's your trip been so far? Let's say you've been to, back on the 18th, you were at AQ Chicken House in Springdale, and last night the Warren's Rec Room in Alma. How's that been so far?
Man, it's been fantastic. The enthusiasm, the patriotism, and the hospitality of the people here in Arkansas is just among the best. And we have been well received, and the people are just excited and enthusiastic about the education. We taught on the Fourth Amendment there in Springdale. And then the lesson that I teach called America Disarmed in Alma, which is also the event that I will be teaching in Jonesboro on Friday, America Disarmed. And then on Thursday in Jonesboro, I'm going to be teaching on state sovereignty.
Wow. I'm really excited. So I'm gonna be there because I'm in Little Rock now, I'll be there at the Hilton Garden Inn tomorrow and on Friday. And so I'm really excited to meet you in person, first of all, and second of all, to listen to some great instruction and great teaching on our founding documents. And so it says here, so that you're going to be in Jonesboro tomorrow night and Friday night at the Hilton Garden Inn, and then you'll head down, I guess, on Saturday, the Courtyard Marriott in Hot Springs at 10 a.m. That is in Hot Springs, and so. You're really just making just these crisscross trips across the state, and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, we're very, very excited about it, and this is the longest we've had to teach in Arkansas, and like I said, the people here are just so excited about these lessons in liberty because Paul, we're not seeing these lessons taught anywhere. The lessons that are dedicated to the original understanding of the Constitution, dedicated to individual personal liberty and the power that the people have through their own activity, through that of their state and local governments, to restore the liberties that America was founded upon. People are tired of waiting on Washington, D.C., and I'm thankful that we're coming to the end of our love of and desire for a Messiah in D.C. to save the American people. People are beginning to realize that the only real defense of liberty is the personal defense, and that only comes through personal knowledge and understanding of liberty itself, but also the way our government was created and the proper operation of that government under our constitutional republic.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You mentioned, I'd like to explore that. You mentioned this Messiah complex. Now, typically, that's something that is seen on the left. It certainly was something that was seen with Barack Obama. Then you look at how, and I know you're familiar with this, the executive branch. Okay, this has just grown over the years, over our 200-year history. It's gotten more and more powerful, and now you do have President Trump in there, and I think it's fair to say there would probably be some that would say that the Messiah complex is also seen, and President Trump just needs to do things. We're seeing that now with President Trump. Some people saying he's going around Congress by using this 1976 law or 1970s law to declare a national emergency and reallocate funds. As a constitutionalist, where do you fall down on that?
Well, the President of the United States, no matter whether you like him or not, or he's your guy or not, doesn't have an authority delegated to him by the Constitution to issue a declaration of national emergency. That is simply not a power that we find in Article 2. And Article 2 is the only source of constitutional authority for the President of the United States. And the idea that because Congress is failing to do this, that it's somehow the duty of the President to pick up a dropped obligation of Congress is also an unconstitutional idea. Our founders created the office of the executive with very, very limited authority for a very specific reason. They were afraid that over the years that the president would become a king, consuming power from the executive and the judicial branches, and becoming the very kind of dictator that we separated from in 76. And the idea that the president should now exercise this power is not only unnecessary, but it is a very dangerous precedent to set. And what we have to understand is through our constitutional republic, if Congress fails to act in a delegated authority, that power does not somehow transfer to another branch of the federal government. Constitutionally speaking, if any branch of government fails in their responsibility through delegated power, that authority then returns to the place from which that power was delegated. And that means that the power returns to the states. The border issue, border security, is not an executive authority. It is solely a congressional authority to declare war or to repel insurrections and to defeat any invasion, or to order the defeat of any invasion. Once Congress then makes those orders, then it's the executive branch, and then only then is it the executive branch's authority to act. But when Congress fails, it becomes the duty of the state to protect their people. So what we should be really seeing, Paul, is a discussion in the public forum and in the political forum about how we activate our states to do their job. And the most discouraging thing is that this discussion is simply not being had. And I believe that it's not being had because the people in power in the federal government don't want the American people to be acquainted with the real power and authority that they possess on the state and local level.
Wow, I can't wait to hear you teach on state sovereignty. And I know you have a lot of this stuff is up on Liberty First University. Is it libertyfirstuniversity.com? Is that what it is, Chris-Ann?
Yes, it's libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating situation to me. So I want to back up with what you said. So talk a little bit about the authority that the legislative branch, Congress, delegated to, and maybe it was unconstitutional when they did, but they passed this law in the 70s. They passed it, saying that the executive can declare a national emergency. So I mean, I've heard before in Article 1, Section 1, it's the non-delegation clause. So talk a little bit about that, because this is a journey, right? This has been a gradual thing where, the executive branch gets larger because in many cases Congress is allowing it to.
Yeah, well, and again, the transfer of power is a per se unconstitutional act, which means the very idea that Congress can transfer power to the president is wrong. And it makes that transfer of power, even though it is done via legislative act, it makes that a null and void act. Article 6, Clause 2 is the authority in the Constitution. It says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. And we know from that clause that laws made by Congress, which are not made in pursuance to the Constitution, are therefore not the supreme law of the land, and the drafters of the Constitution went so far to say that those particular laws are null and void. So when Congress creates a law that is not made within the authority of the Constitution or is contrary to an authority within the Constitution, then those laws have the effect of no law at all. And that's what we have to really understand, is that this law that Congress created in the 70s is simply a null and void act because it's contrary to the Constitution itself. And the only authority that this law possesses is the authority that we allow it to have in its illegal status, which means that we're allowing the Constitution, we're allowing Congress and the office of the president to act illegally, contrary to the supreme law of the land.
Okay, so, I mean, what you've just said there is something that I've talked about before. It's been a while. I mean, but we're not operating with any sort of constitutional framework then, because you look at all of these agencies that operate under the executive branch that Congress itself created, and they create all these rules, or they can submit them to the Federal Registry. They're rules, but they're essentially laws, because if you don't follow them, you either pay a fine or go to jail. The same thing happens it's the same thing that happens if you don't obey a law. And so Congress, is not supposed to be able to take their lawmaking authority and just give it to another body, but that's what's happened time and time again. So, I mean, how long has this been going on, Chris Ann? I mean, this is really, we haven't been operating under the document we have for decades, if not, a century, it seems like.
Well, and it's what you're saying, what you're really telling us, and what we must admit, is that we have a completely lawless government when they act under these laws that are made contrary to the Constitution and outside constitutional authority. Now, from an academic perspective, I can trace that back to 1833, when we began teaching that the lawlessness of our Congress should be acceptable. And that's when we really started changing our perspective on how Congress, how the Constitution, and even how the judiciary and the executive branches are to operate. And so we didn't begin actually operating lawlessly in 1833, but that's when the plans of this errant understanding and application of the Constitution began at the academic level.
Wow.
So we've been teaching the wrong things since 1833. And here's the key. Samuel Adams, our founders, warned us about errant education and a lawless federal government. Samuel Adams said, no people will timidly surrender their liberties or be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. And meanwhile, we are so distracted by every invention of federal drama that we're missing the fact that our greatest threat in America doesn't come from a southern border or an ISIS invasion. They are the product. Those threats are the very product of the ignorance that has been thrust upon the American people to keep us just distracted and dedicated to the wrong things in government.
We're talking with Chris Ann Hall. She's a constitutional attorney and educator. She's a radio host. You can find out more about her great class at Liberty First University. Again, she's going to be tonight. Actually, you're crossing the border, Chris, and you're going to be in Sallisaw, Oklahoma at the Sequoia County Fairgrounds at 7 p.m. presenting on Liberty First University. But then the next 2 nights in Jonesboro at the Hilton Garden Inn, then down to Hot Springs over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. You can find this, folks. We got this posted up at conduitnews.com, and also know it's up at is it Liberty First University or chrisannhall.com?
chrisannhall.com. We have a calendar on chrisannhall.com, and it gives you all of our appearances. We travel all over America. We have, for the last 7 years, averaged about 260 classes in over 22 states, and we are just so excited to be.
Real quick, because I want to kind of get back to what we talked about at just the very beginning. So you mentioned on the sovereignty of the states. So the Congress fails to act, right? So I'm just thinking idealistically, but at the same time practically. So let's say Texas is like, it's up to us. Texas, we're going to build this border. We're going to secure our border.
Right.
We of course know that would be challenged in court, right? I mean, that's the reality that we live in.
Well, the reality, okay, so that is the forced reality, yes. But the true application of the understanding of the Constitution is that even if the federal court would tell the states that they are not to exercise this power, the states would understand by Article 6, Clause 2, and by Article 3, the delegation of power to the judicial branch, that particular opinion issued by the court would also be null and void, because the court cannot remove power from the state that lawfully exists by opinion. And that's something that we have also lost based on that errant understanding of the Constitution that we've been teaching for the last since 1833. The Supreme Court cannot amend the Constitution by Supreme Court opinion. And the ruling matter in this is the 10th Amendment, that if the powers are not delegated to the United States, that they are reserved to the states. Now, the key word there, Paul, in the 10th Amendment is delegated. And that word delegate means a temporary trust of authority or responsibility from a higher power to a lower power. We know through history and through the creation of our Constitution that the delegation of every power to the federal government comes from the states. So if since the states are the delegators of that power, that means they are the higher power that is temporarily trusting the federal government with this authority. And it's like an employee-employer relationship. When the employee, the federal government, fails to do the job the states have delegated to it, that power returns to the states to make sure that the people and their rights are always secure. We are not left to flounder and just simply wait for invasion if the federal government fails. We have a personal responsibility and a responsibility delegated by the people to the local and state governments to ensure the security of our rights. If you read the Declaration of Independence, Paul, the entire purpose of government, it says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. So the only reason our state and local governments exist are to secure our rights.
Chris Ann Hall, we really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in your upcoming events here in Arkansas. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Now, we have a specific article on the constitutionality of the national emergency by the president at chrisannhall.com, and lots of other great articles to help.
Awesome. Thank you. Can't wait to meet you tomorrow night.
Thank you, sir. Me too.
Chris Ann Hall, everybody. Obviously, she knows what she's talking about. And so if you want an originalist interpretation of this Constitution, and really and truly, I mean, what I got out of that interview just now is the fact that I mean, Constitution doesn't mean anything. Like, in terms of practicality, in terms of like, are we living within the confines of that document? No, not even close. Not even close. It's kind of discouraging when you think about it. But hey, the only way to even try to, turn the ship around is to educate people on what the truth is. And what she is speaking, I don't know if you can tell, is coded in truth. It is just the truth of what that document allowed the government to do. And we have far, for a long time gotten outside of that. Anyway, we got to take a break, folks. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
$300 million and almost $300 billion under just the proposed constitutional amendment.
Yeah. I was going to say, so the proposed constitutional amendment, I thought that was closer to $200 million. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. Well, $205 million is the state portion, and then $88 million
okay.
cities and counties.
There we go again. It's worked. It worked on me, Josh. It worked on me.
There you
go. Yeah. So okay. So that is something. So that's $300 million right there. That if the people in 2020 say no, we don't want this. We want the sales tax to go down because it was set to expire back in 2012. I mean, that's a possibility here that happens. But here we do have, something that can kind of fuel the skepticism of people who, we want to trust government, and this is set to expire, but now that they've gotten used to the certain, amount of revenue from the people.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Sorry. I talked for so long with Chris Ann Hall that we're kind of up against a hard break here. Did you hear about the Covington teen, Mr. Sandman, Covington Catholic Sandman? Did you hear about this? So his attorneys are suing the Washington Post for $250 million. That's the amount Jeff Bezos spent to buy the paper. And this is it's pretty incredible. They say that they're also going to bring other litigation against other individuals. Folks, it was fake news. It might be the most expensive fake news story ever, too, if you think about it. We got half an hour of the program left. Coming up, I'm going to tell you what happened yesterday at the Marble Palace here in Little Rock.
$300 million and almost $300 billion under just the proposed constitutional amendment.
Yeah. I was going to say, see, the proposed constitutional amendment, I thought that was closer to $200 million. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. Well, $205 million is the state portion, and then $88 million is cities and counties.
There we go again. It's worked. It worked on me, Josh. It worked on me.
There you
go. Yeah. So okay. So that is something. So that's $300 million right there. That if the people in 2020 say no, we don't want this. We want the sales tax to go down because it was set to expire back in 2012. I mean, that's a possibility here that happens. But here we do have, something that can kind of fuel the skepticism of people who, we want to trust government, and this is set to expire, but now that they've gotten used to the certain, amount of revenue from the people, they don't want to let it go, and so they're sending it back to us. It's funny, even when government is set to shrink, meaning less money to the government, which means it's set to shrink. It's in the statute. It's going to shrink if you just leave it alone. We have people that say no. We need to make sure that you really want it to shrink, even though it's already set to. So that's frustrating. So it's an easy bill to oppose. It's taking more money from the people. It's an increase in the size of government, and so it's understandable why Conduit opposes it just on those grounds alone. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the committee tomorrow. Let's talk about a bill that made the scorecard, Josh. That Conduit is supporting. It is SB 308, civil asset forfeiture reform by Senator Bart Hester, a Republican, and State Representative Austin McCullum, also a Republican. What can you tell us about this bill?
Yeah, so this is a problem all over the country, the idea of civil asset forfeiture. And simplified, for people who might not know what that means, it's basically the government and law enforcement stealing people's stuff before they've ever been convicted of a crime. And so what happens is when someone's arrested, they'll seize assets such as a car, cash, guns, anything that they, in their just kind of discretion, think is part of a crime. Part of carrying out a crime. And so those assets are seized up front, and then basically the person then has to prove their innocence. And in America, we have a presumption of innocence, yet these civil asset forfeiture laws are on the books. So this bill, Paul, would flip that and say, hey, it makes it harder for government to steal people's stuff before being convicted of a crime. And this specific piece of legislation would require a person to first be convicted of a felony offense related to the property being seized.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Telephone number to text if you want, 870-275-9799. Also up at facebook.com/Conduit News and conduitnews.com. This courtesy of Conduit for Action. Thought this was interesting. And let's see here. Homestead tax relief bill delayed. Politicians look to grab money is the headline. Listen to this. This is interesting. This is actually a really good bill, but I didn't realize, there's all kinds of funds that you don't even realize exist here in the state of Arkansas until, somebody with knowledge that's much more, there's a very few amount of people that really understand everything in any government, right? Because everything is so complex. And the less people understand a complex system, the more opportunity there is for corruption. Can we agree with that, by the way? As the Arkansas legislature pursues ethics reform, and again, any meaningful ethics reform, I believe, needs to have Medicaid disclosure because that's where all of the crime is. It's pretty obvious that's where the crimes are being committed, is in the Medicaid disclosure. And so I think, well, okay, let me just say this. I use the word crime because, I think it's criminal. I mean, I do. I think there's a reason people are fighting tooth and nail to not disclose it, right? I mean, go read the Rusty Cranford guilty plea. And the word bribe, okay, can we agree that bribes are illegal? Okay, all right. Well, I just happen to think that there's a lot of bribery going on that's disguised as something else. They're calling it something else. I'm not going to call it a bribe. So anything Medicaid disclosure. But on that subject, we talked about this last hour. The smaller the group and the more complex the system, the more opportunity there is to get something by that's not ethical or immoral or whatever. Can we agree there? Yeah. And that's why government needs to actually be very simplified and small, by the way, and transparent because of that. And it's really, we're talking about the human heart here. But all that being said, there is a bill to give you more money in your pocket. It is State Representative Lanny Fight's bill, House Bill 1321. So right now you have the homestead property tax credit. So this is the homestead. So if you got this, if you live in your house, this is where your full-time residence is. You get a tax credit of right now $350. Matter of fact, I'm intimately familiar with this because somehow I didn't get the homestead tax credit last year personally. This was told to me because I was like, my mortgage company said your taxes went up 300, over almost $400 last year. I said my property taxes went up. Well, turns out they just didn't have an application or a thing on file for me. So anyway, we're trying to get that messed up. So I'm intimately aware with the $350 tax credit for homestead. I just want you to know that personally, getting all that worked out there. And so Lanny Fight wants to increase that homestead tax credit by $25. The bill would increase the tax credit to $375 a year. While we think it is likely the bill will still pass, it looks like there's a delay, according to ConduitNews.com here, because the tax and spend politicians want to get their hands on, listen to this, $104 million surplus in a fund I didn't even know existed called the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund. So you would think that the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund might be something that they could use in the future to give us even more of a tax credit for our homestead property. I mean, but apparently there are politicians, they see this $104 million sitting there, and $104 million is, hang on one second. $104 million is a lot of money in this day and age in Arkansas. And this would, it writes here, this would not be the first time politicians have raided the fund. For example, in 2005, the legislature authorized the transfer of $40 million out of the fund. Again, we've got money stashed everywhere in these trust funds. It seems like, I've never even heard of this fund. In 2016, one of the trust fund sources of income was taken away and is now used for highway spending. Imagine how much property tax relief could be gained by taxpayers if the politicians did not view the Property Tax Relief Trust Fund as just another slush fund for their projects. Property Tax Relief Trust Fund was created in response to the people approving Amendment 79 in 2000. That's where it came from. And Amendment 79 requires the legislature to provide at least $300 property tax credits for homesteads. As stated above, the law now provides a $350 tax credit. Lanny Fight, Republican, wants to raise it to $375, which would be great. Although the legislature named the fund with the words Property Tax Relief Trust Fund, they never closed the door by saying the fund could only be used for property tax relief. Without a restriction, the fund has been treated just as another slush fund. Interesting stuff. Did you know about this? I certainly did it. Anyway, it looks like that bill's going to pass, but politicians see money, and they want to allocate it where it needs to go. Hey, listen, $104 million, that's a lot of money these days in Arkansas when we have to continue to pay for, well, I mean, they're looking for money everywhere, I would imagine. But anyway, let's transition here. Yesterday was the beginning of Scope Week, and we interviewed on Monday State Representative John Eubanks on his bill to expand the scope of practice for optometrists and every ophthalmologist in the state. I'm talking about every ophthalmologist in the state. They got down a Little Rock, they packed that room. Listen, I think it was congenial. It's congenial, but it's fun. It's interesting to me as I was in there to see. It certainly wasn't a relaxing environment. Let's just put it that way. When you have two classes of professionals, one of them just want to work and the other one want to stop them from working. Oh man. Yeah. Seriously, I was thinking about all of the things, we could just, sensationalize everything, right? The room was so packed, I had to wait outside until like the very end. I've caught up by watching the audio of what happened with this bill. I thought about sticking my head in the door and yelling, optometrists want people to die. The reason I say that is because if you listen to these detractors, that you would think that the ophthalmologist got real close to just essentially saying that. Oh, and by the way, the word surgery was a 4-letter word. My goodness. Everyone is so on edge. The bill failed. Okay, the bill failed yesterday. It on a roll call vote, it got 9 yes votes. It needed 2 more to pass. One of those votes, I'm confident Jack Ladyman, the chairman, if it had gotten to 10, he would have voted yes to get it out of committee. A couple of things. There were some Republicans that voted no on this. There were some Democrats that voted yes, surprisingly. Now, there is at least one Republican no vote yesterday that I have been told is a yes. And I spoke with, via text message, State Representative Austin McCullum. So let me just break this down for you, because I think this bill is going to be run again by John Eubanks, and I think it's going to pass. Austin McCullum, who's a very liberty-minded guy. He is a very pro-freedom, pro-liberty, pro-deregulation type of guy. And I know that just from looking at his voting record, okay? So when State Representative Austin McCullum, when he voted no on the bill, I thought that was interesting. So I reached out to him and I asked him, I said, hey, what were your issues with that particular piece of legislation? Well, so if you go watch the video, there was a request made to amend the legislation, to put an amendment on there to clarify exactly what, and I'm paraphrasing, probably doing a bad job of summarizing this, but to clarify exactly what the optometrists want to do and make sure that there's not language in the bill that's going to expand it and allow optometrists to do even more beyond what's being debated. And so in the interest of, being honest, some people are just like, hey, we'd like to have that amendment. Well, State Representative John Eubanks yesterday said that he would commit to amend the bill on the Senate side. So what that would mean is the bill would pass out of committee, and then it would theoretically pass out of the House of Representatives, and then you would amend it on the Senate side, going through that committee process. Well, that's a lot of trust, And from what I can, and if I were in that position, because I've thought about this many times, because this happens a lot. This is a frequent thing. Hey, vote for my bill, and I commit to you to amend it but I don't want to not run it today. You know what I'm saying? This happens a lot, and a lot of times that they pass, believe it or not, and so, but from what I can tell, some legislators only vote based on the bill that's in front of them at the moment. And I respect that. Because there is no way to make sure once it gets out of that committee, you're powerless. You can't control what the Senate does. You can't control whether there's an amendment put on it or not. It's all and it's all a good faith effort. And that's not to question the motives of people. It's just politics is not a certainty, and you can never predict. Well, we'll get that. There's no way you can predict that. You know, you've got 135 people down here, and one of them might have a donut, or one of them might forget to have their donut, you know, one morning, or they didn't get a cup of coffee, and they're just angry enough to vote against the bill, just to vote against it. You know what I'm saying? We're all human beings, okay? So there's nothing certain. And so the status of this deregulation of optometry bill, and I know this is really into the weeds here, but I think it's going to run again, and if the votes hold the way they were, I think it will pass, especially if it's amended. I mean, or according to my sources, if it's amended. So, but I wanted to bring you some of the audio here. But keep in mind, we have one of the most burdensome regulatory environments in the nation here in the state of Arkansas. We have more licensing boards in the state of Arkansas than the state of New York has. We really want to make sure you have greased the right palms before you get the right to work in this state. Let me tell you, we want to make sure that now they're going to say it's about public safety. Well, if Oklahoma optometrists have been doing certain procedures that ophthalmologists do, very limited in scope, for 20 years, and of course they brought up some cases where an optometrist made a mistake. You know, I guess ophthalmologists never make mistakes. See, this is the thing. There's risk. There's inherent risk in everything. There's inherent risk in everything that happens. So they brought that up, but I'm just telling you right now, the fact of the matter is optometrists want to work. They want to be able to perform this. They want to be able to provide a service that they're already trained to do, and that level of changes makes the ophthalmologist very uncomfortable. And you know what it really comes down to, folks? The ophthalmologists, I know some of them, they really believe this is an issue of public safety. I know others might be more honest with themselves and just know this is about the money. And I know others might be honest with themselves and just examine themselves and say, you know, fact of the matter is I paid a lot more money because I went to school longer. I went to school longer, and I paid more money. And you guys, optometrists, you went to school less, and you paid less money, and you shouldn't get to do what I do. Now, keep in mind, this has nothing to do with like LASIK eye surgery or anything like that. That's still something that only ophthalmologists do. This has something to do with defined procedures that are already being done. Lasers are involved, limited, but not LASIK. So this is also would allow optometrists to remove certain lesions, I think, from the eye, which is weird. I didn't even know I should have lesions. But anyway, I'm not a doctor. But let's pick up. This is a guy named Dr. David Cockrell, I think is his name. This is video from yesterday in the committee room. He spoke at the very beginning, and the debate lasted. It just seems like it went back and forth forever. But he is been on the board of the Oklahoma licensing board over there when it comes to optometry. And they've been doing this for 20 years. And people over here want you to believe the sky's going to fall if Arkansas optometrists get to do the same thing that Oklahoma and Kentucky optometrists get to do. Listen to the audio, Joe, whenever you're ready. Go ahead, sir.
Members of the Public Health, Welfare, and Labor Committee for this opportunity to present today. I am David Cockrell, as I said, and I've served on the Oklahoma State Board of Examiners in Optometry since 1996. I've served in all positions on the board, including president. As a practicing optometric physician in Oklahoma, I am laser certified and perform all these procedures throughout my career. I and the majority of optometrists in Oklahoma perform these procedures for surgical relief of capsular fibrosis, as well as some of the glaucoma procedures that are involved in this, as well as photorefractive surgery. Legislatures are frequently asked to support legislation with little or no long-term study of the effects of the legislation. And you may wonder about the capabilities of the applicants, or in this case, the education behind the request, as well as the eventual outcome of the legislation for the citizens of Arkansas. With this legislation, optometry can point to nearly a 30-year plus career of successful, unblemished track record with these procedures in question today. The timeline of laser utilization by optometry in Oklahoma began in the late 1980s. Utilization of laser technology in eye care in the United States began in the 1980s as well. with treatments for capsular fibrosis and some of the other procedures in question. It has progressed to the point to include several new procedures since that time, including some of the ones we'll talk about today. Optometry began utilization of all of the new types of procedures you're considering here in conjunction with ophthalmology. That's how I actually learned, working in co-management centers with ophthalmology as well as in private ophthalmology practices. Oklahoma's statute had no restrictions on any type of technology to treat eye disease, and laser use by optometry was not questioned by the legislature when optometry started to use lasers at the same time as the ophthalmology practices did. They also were not questioned by ophthalmology since optometrists were performing the laser procedures while working in ophthalmology practices. Let's see. After 10 years of providing care for patients with laser surgery, there was a lawsuit initiated by ophthalmology, and as a result of the 1997 lawsuit initiated by ophthalmology, a judge ruled that lasers used by optometrists was a legislative issue, so we returned to the legislature to clarify our law. And during that lawsuit, interestingly, the president of the medical board testified that neither he nor the medical board was aware, even anecdotally, of any instance where an OD had hurt or harmed a patient by performing any of these laser procedures. Oklahoma optometric statute was then changed in 1997 to specifically include laser surgery procedures. We excluded retina, we excluded laser in situ LASIK and cosmetic lid surgery, which this is not in question for this bill. The legislation did not specifically list each and every procedure that could be performed because improvements in medical technology frequently make current procedures obsolete, and future methods or treatments are often more effective. The statute was written to allow optometry to integrate these future technologies and or treatments in practice as they become available, just as general allopathic medicine does. At the time of the legislation, Oklahoma was not the only place that
that's
lasers
just the preview. And it went on like that, and then people, people came up and spoke for, they spoke against, and went back and forth, and the ophthalmologist made, they were like, no, this is our profession. State Representative Steve McGee, he's on the Public Health Committee. He's an ophthalmologist, so he was against this. No surprise there. But, the bottom line is, from what I got, I'm sorry, it just seemed very, in many ways, there was a tinge of elitism going on there. There's professional rivalry and everything else. And just full disclosure, and I've said this before, my father is an optometrist, so that certainly is something that you need to know. This is about really deregulation. It is about how hard it is to do just the smallest things. I want you to think about this. This is, I can tell you that we've got more licensing boards in the state of New York, right? This is one aspect. This is like such a tiny sliver of something. Reform is hard. Once the government gets involved in regulating anything, it is almost impossible to stop them from continuing to regulate it. Mission creep, if you will. So it doesn't matter. See, the state of Arkansas says it doesn't matter if optometrists go to school and they're trained to do these things. Ophthalmologists are trained longer. They go to school longer, and so we shouldn't allow this to happen. Never mind the fact that it'll provide more choice and lower the cost for consumers. No, we don't need to worry about that. This is about public safety. Is it really about public safety? I mean, I know you can point to tragedies, you can point to things that happen that are bad. Bad things happen. You can't stop that. Risk is always going to be there. If you were to ever successfully eliminate risk out of society, you would eliminate achievement. Think about that. Anyway, man, isn't that nuts? Hey, the ophthalmologist, they had actually a good point. The ophthalmologists had a good point as to why the optometrist shouldn't be able to do this. They cited the VA, the Veterans Administration. So optometrists used to be able to do these procedures at the VA. And then the VA then banned optometrists from being able to do the procedures. A lot of people are wondering why, because they have quotes saying the optometrists, there were never any serious issues, nothing systemic or anything like that. Well, it turns out that the guy at the VA who banned optometrists from being able to do these procedures, after he worked at the VA, he went on to work for some ophthalmology organization promoting ophthalmology. Anyway, we're going to take a break, folks. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
So, move in the right direction for sure on civil asset forfeiture.
Yeah, that's something that's bothered me for a long time, civil asset forfeiture. So this bill by Senator Hester and Representative McCollum is a bill to protect private property, is really what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Paul, the Institute for Justice studied states and how they rank basically on this civil asset forfeiture. And Arkansas got a D- grade. And when you look at the numbers, you might say, well, how much is this actually costing people? Over $80 million in assets from the people of Arkansas have been seized by the government since 2000 under this scheme, really, is how you can call it.
Yeah, there was one guy. Wasn't there one guy who was traveling through Arkansas trying to get to Memphis to buy a car, and he had like 10 grand on him? And he got pulled over for speeding, and they just took his $10,000, and he never got it back or something.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. We've had a good show this morning. We really appreciate it. We got to interview Senator Tom Cotton earlier in Senator Cotton's video. If you want to see him or hear the interview, it'll be up at Conduit News later in the day. Also, Chrisanne Hall, really thankful that she was able to speak with us. Did you hear President Trump is now taking back a $1 billion grant from California? Gavin Newsom, the governor there, complains it's political retribution. The Trump administration announced Tuesday that it was canceling a federal grant to California worth nearly $1 billion after Gavin Newsom announced the cancellation of the state's high-speed rail project last week. They also said they're going to try to get some of the money back that they wasted on a now non-existent high-speed rail. It's too expensive, just like all of the progressive progressive dreams, man. They cost so much money. If we had unlimited resources, that would be one thing, but we don't. Folks, we'll be covering the 92nd General Assembly today. Stay tuned for all of that. And Arkansas, be safe.